Dependent Origination 3. The Formation of Self. Avijja Pajaya Sankhara. This means ignorance conditions the karmic formations, i.e., body and mind as defined by the five khandhas. That is when we operate from a position of ignorance, not understanding the truth. And everything that we experience and do and say and feel is conditioned from that ignorance. Absolutely everything. This is where the self-view is such a blind spot. When we think of the karmic formation as self rather than as not self, everything that happens, everything that's experienced, is referred to that sense of a person as a physical body, me as a perception. This is avijja pajaya sankhara. If you have the insight that all conditions are impermanent, all Dhamma is not self, then there's knowing, or vijja, and truth, or Dhamma, rather than ignorance, avijja, and habitual kama, sankhara. There's knowing the Dhamma, the truth of the way it is. Then all the rest follows suit. Everything is seen as it is. There's no distortion. Consciousness, the five aggregates, and the sense world are seen as Dhamma rather than as self. What is your suffering in life anyway? Why do you suffer? If you investigate, you can always trace it back to avijja pajaya sankhara. There's natural suffering, going hungry, getting old, getting sick, but that's all bearable. There's nothing that we can't bear. Sickness, old age, and death are things we can always bear with. They're not real suffering. Suffering is the greed, hatred, and delusion we produce through the self-view, through taking it all personally. The creations and attachments to wrong views, prejudices, biases, and all the horrors that we're responsible for can all be traced back to avijja pajaya sankhara. We cannot really expect very much improvement if we still insist on being ignorant, caught in the self-view. Even though we might be able to improve conditions slightly by trying to be a good person, as long as there is attachment to self-view, there's delusion. So even the goodness we do comes from delusion. It doesn't lead anyone out of suffering. If we don't have wisdom, often we try to do good but end up harming and causing all kinds of problems, while thinking we can tell others what's good for them. What is the way it is at this moment? Your body is sitting. You can feel things, pleasure, pain, heat, cold, whatever. This is the way things are. There's no self in that. We're not creating the self. When we bring our attention to the way things are, we can see what we do when we add me and mine to the moment. What I think, what I feel, what I want, what I don't want, what I like, what I don't like. Or we can be aware of the selves we create in others, my opinions about you. I have suffered a lot from creating people in my mind, not because anybody was really cruel to me, but because of all the things I used to create about myself and about other people. The fear of what others thought, jealousies, envy, greed, possessiveness. I would have my prejudices and views about people, what I thought they were really up to, and my suspicions about what they really wanted. So suffering comes out of the creations we make about ourselves and others, about our parents and the people closest to us. What is suffering? Really ask yourself, what's the suffering of your life? Yesterday the cold winds were blowing through me as I was walking out there in the field. Is that suffering? I could make it suffering. I hate this cold wind. But actually it was all right. It was something I could completely bear. If I didn't make anything about it in my mind, it was just cold wind and that's all. Yet we can spend time in Amaravati creating attitudes about monks, nuns, lay people. You can really make senior nuns into big ogres. We can have strong views about seniority. If we're in a senior position, we can be very attached to it. I am senior to you. You are just a new monk. Do that. I'm the boss. So we can create ourselves as being senior monks. But we're not here to create karma based on ignorance. The conventions we have are merely expedient means. They're simplifications, moral agreements, and community agreements to make life simple and uncomplicated. And also to allow us to reflect on the way we relate to people above. Senior people, equal people, junior people. The Buddha said, the view that everybody is equal is a delusion. I am superior to everyone is a delusion. I am inferior is a delusion. I am is a delusion if that identity is based on ignorance. But when there's Vijja, I am is merely conventional reality. It's just the way we talk. I'm hungry, or I'm Luang Por Sumedho, but it's not a person. When there's a Vijja, it conditions the sankhara, which conditions consciousness or vijnana. Consciousness conditions mentality and corporeality, namarupa, which conditions the sense bases, salayatana, which conditions contact, phassa, which conditions feeling, vedana. When ignorance is the primary condition, the rest are all affected by it. The sensory world, body and mind are related to in terms of me and mine. This is the self-view. In contrast to Brahmanism, where the Hindu talks about the Atman or the higher self, the One, when the Buddha talks of self, it's related to attachment to the five khandhas, to body, feeling, perceptions, volitions, and consciousness. Attachment to that, ignorance, conditions karmic formations. All this creates a sense of self. This self-view starts to become strong when you're age 6 to 7. You go to school and you compete and compare, and this strong sense of a self starts being conditioned in your mind. I remember the first 5 or 6 years of my life being magical, and then after 6 or 7 it started getting increasingly worse. Before that there wasn't very much sense of self. In a country like the United States, which is a very nice country actually, there's an emphasis on self-view. There's not a tremendous amount of wisdom in that country, and the personality view is very much the dominant theme. I am an individual, I have my rights, I can do what I want. You can't tell me what to do, who do you think you are? I'm as good as you are, get off my back. The egalitarian Americans have strong individualistic attachment to being an individual with a fascinating personality, a real character, a good guy. This is the American emphasis on the personal level. Being a good guy is all right, there's nothing wrong with it. But as a Vijja Pajaya Sankhara, it can only bring suffering. When there are ignorance and the self-view, the good guy is always going to suffer. Avijja conditions the sankhara, which condition consciousness, which conditions mentality, corporeality, which conditions the 6 senses, which conditions contact and then feeling conditions desire, the vedana tanha connection. You can notice that if you're caught in attachment to personality view or self, desire, grasping, upadana, and becoming, bhava, will be operating. You'll be lost in that pattern because when there's ignorance, in the moment it affects everything. Consciousness, the senses, sense objects, feeling. And then desire comes into it. I want something, I want to be happy, I want to become, I want to get rid of, I want. Examine desire during this retreat. Really get to know what desire is. From my own reflection on it, I see it's always energy aiming at something, whether it's restless and scattered or aimed at something definite. There's a strong desire to get rid of things we don't like as quickly as possible. We want to get what we want instantly and get rid of what we don't like instantly. We don't value patience anymore in our society. We want efficiency. Everything looks nice, and then something comes in and makes a mess, and we have to clean it up immediately because we don't want obstacles or hindrances or anything unpleasant. We want to get rid of it quickly. So we're very impatient, and we can get very upset and annoyed at things because of this desire to get rid of this vibhava tanha. The desire to become, ambition, bhava tanha, is often a motivation within the religious life. We want to become an enlightened personality. So bhava tanha and vibhava tanha are to be studied and examined. You can reflect on them. You can listen to these desires. I want to get enlightened. I want to get samadhi. I want to make the best I can out of this retreat so I can have some kind of achievement or attainment from it all. Or to get rid of things. I hope I can get rid of all my lust and anger during this retreat. I hope to get rid of the jealousy so I never have to be jealous again. During this retreat, I'm working on jealousy. I'm working on doubt or fear. If I can get rid of my fear by the end of this retreat, I will have no more fear left because I'm trying to get right in there and annihilate fear. That's vibhava tanha. There's something wrong with me, and I have to get to make it right. I've got to become something else by getting rid of these bad things, these wrong things about me. It's still I am, and me and mine. Kama tanha is quite obvious. It's the desire for pleasurable sense experiences. These forms of desire are to be known and understood. The trap is that we tend to think the Buddha teaches us to get rid of our desires. That's how some people interpret Buddhism, but that's wrong. The Buddha taught us how to look at and understand desire so that we don't grasp it. That's not telling us to get rid of desire, but to really understand it so that it can no longer delude us. The desire to get rid of desire is still desire. It's not looking at desire. With that desire, you're just grasping a perception that you shouldn't have desires and you have to get rid of them. But through understanding dependent origination, we see tanha as dhamma rather than as self. You're looking at tanha, desire, as that which arises and ceases. That's dhamma. In 22 years of careful looking and close observation, I've not found one desire that arises and keeps arising. If any of you do find one, please tell me. Kama tanha is fairly coarse and fairly obvious. I want something to eat, or sexual desires. But vibhava tanha can be very subtle, righteous and important, and one can be deluded by that righteous quality. The desire to get rid of evil can seem so right. We can dedicate our lives to getting rid of the evils in this world and become fanatical. This is what you can see in modern social problems. There are the degenerate tendencies of this society, leading to sexual aberrations and drugs, and then there are the very righteous forms of fundamentalism, which condemn the degenerate, loose-living, immoral behavior of one element of society. But we're looking at desire itself, from the gross forms of want and lust to the righteous passion of wanting to kill and annihilate those degenerates. Contemplate that as something within your own mind. I've seen both tendencies in myself. I can become attracted to sensual pleasures, and I can also be really hard and self-righteous, critical of others or myself. Bhava tanha can be very sweet too, when it's intended for the welfare of others. It's not just that I want to attain something so I can say I have attained something. There's also the bhava tanha of wanting, because you feel you'd like to help everyone else. There's still the I am. I want to get enlightened, and then I'm going to really help everyone else, and I want to become someone who's not selfish but works totally for the welfare of all sentient beings. That's very altruistic. It's beautiful and inspiring, but it can also be bhava tanha if it's coming from avijja, pajaya, sankhara. When we see clearly with vijja and see dhamma, There's nobody to become anything, or to achieve or attain. Things are as they are. Good is done, and bad is refrained from in action and speech. There's doing good. What is there left to do in life but to be virtuous? Isn't that the beauty of our humanity? What's truly joyful and lovely about being human is our ability to be virtuous. I can't think of anything else to do. The human experience is for virtue and goodness, and refraining from doing evil, harmful things to ourselves and others. I can't think of anything else worth doing.